Greetings, trombonists at large. I am the Vagrant Trombone, here to talk to you again about mouthpieces. I know, mouthpieces. All right, let's talk about mouthpieces. So today, in particular, I want to talk about the drill and the backbore of our mouthpiece, or the throat and the backbore of our mouthpieces. This is a topic that I don't really know a lot about because the people I used to talk to didn't have as much agreement as they did disagreement, which left it off into the ethereal mystery of trombone. So there are some basic ideas that do cross over, and I'll just talk about those quickly. Now, I want to talk about the throat and the backbore together because they are very relative to each other, as are all parts of our mouthpiece, but these are more closely related to each other than they tend to have more of a unified effect. They do the same things, essentially. So we have the 5 parts of our mouthpiece. Let me put this down. We have the 5 parts of our mouthpiece. We have the rim, the cup, the bore, or the drill, or the throat, the backbore, and the blank. So we come up over the top of our rim to the bite, and where we measure the diameter. Then we have the top of our cup, which we drop into the cup wall. Now, some mouthpieces have a bit of a transition area, screw rim mouthpieces or undercut mouthpieces, where the screw rims need to be a little bit longer so they can have more room for threads to gain a good purchase on the cup. And then the undercut mouthpieces, which have a transition to the wall of the cup, which may be wider than the diameter of the rim. But for the most part, most mouthpieces come over the bite to the diameter and then drop straight down to the wall, where we curve in, and then we have the reversal of that curve, which is the shoulder, to the venturi, which is the bottom of the cup, and the top of our drill. Now, the throat, some people consider part of the shoulder to be the throat, and that it seems very sensible to think of it that way. But from a lot of musicians, a lot of designers, and a lot of machinists that I had talked to, they really consider the drill to be the throat. So we have the drill, which can either be cylindrical, straight-walled on both sides, or it can be slightly eccentric, where it's narrow at the venturi and slightly wider at the bottom before it goes into the backbore, which is either a straight taper or undercut. So with the drill on a mouthpiece, a narrower drill will tend to be a brighter sound. A wider drill will tend to be a darker sound. A narrower drill will offer smaller targets for your pitch, and the pitch will be a little more closed. A wider drill has larger targets, and we may find that at the top of our register, we're getting a little out of tune. We may have some pitch issues with the top of the register because the targets are larger. The narrower targets make it a little easier for flexibility, but it's easier to chip because there's very little overlap in those narrow targets. On a larger diameter drill, we have larger targets, but because of the pitch issue, it can be a little sloppier to transition. Now, when we are talking about narrow drill and wide drill, I'm talking about in relation to the diameter of the rim. What is a wide drill on a tenor trombone mouthpiece, a small bore tenor trombone mouthpiece like this 11C, may be tiny on a bass trombone mouthpiece. And so we always need to remember that these sizes, we're talking in relation to the rim diameter. So when I have a narrow drill on an 11C for the rim diameter, I'm going to get a brighter sound. I'm also going to get more resistance through that mouthpiece due to airflow. Narrower hole, less air can travel through it. Wider hole, more air can travel through it. What does that do? It creates more pressure in the cup of my mouthpiece, more resistance, more pressure. So it will aid in endurance playing high. More pressure in the mouthpiece makes it easier to maintain that pressure while I'm playing to be able to create more endurance, to give me more endurance in the high register. It also makes it easier to play in the high register. A wider drill is going to allow more air, which is going to make it more difficult, take more strength to be able to maintain the same pressure in the cup to be able to stay in the high register. So endurance will suffer on a wider drill. The length of the drill is also very important. A longer drill length, especially when it's a cylindrical drill, is going to create more pressure in that mouthpiece. Because of laminar flow, we are going to have more friction along the walls of the drill as the air passes through it, fastest flow being in the middle. Now, some of this can be compensated for undercutting our back bore, which allows a low pressure zone right at the top of this undercut part of the back bore, which actually helps pull air through. When we do this, it also creates slightly richer sound, so we can compensate for some of the brightness of a narrower drill with an undercut back bore. But because of this airflow that we have going through here, it can create some resonance issues with attack in certain registers. You'll get like doubled attack where the sound is actually canceling itself out while it's bouncing through this zone of low pressure before it equalizes into the horn. You can get putty attack. Now, I've experienced that, but it's been in like the mid to low register between D above the staff and like F in the staff. So, and that might have been more me and the structures of my head and compensating to those pressures than the mouthpiece itself. For somebody else, it might work great. Your mileage may vary. And this is all very subjective when we get to these kinds of things, but there are general truths. We're going to have a richer, darker sound on a wider drill. Now, the pressure variance from the cup through the drill can be equalized by lengthening the throat of the wider drill, but it will not necessarily, which can aid in endurance up high, but it won't help us in brightening up the sound. When we get that richer, darker sound, the wall of brightness is farther away, and it'll take a larger volume of air to pressurize the cup to the right amount where you can get that more gripping, brighter, edgy sound. So with like a classical mouthpiece, well, oftentimes not only will it have a wider diameter, but it'll also have a larger drill relative to the diameter of the mouthpiece to create that darker sound and keep that edgier, brighter sound farther away. Conversely, if we take the longer, narrow drill and we shorten it, we can help ease the amount of pressure in the mouthpiece, enrich the sound a little bit by lengthening the backboard taper, which will help create more warmth in the sound, but then we may get less stability in the notes themselves when we're moving fast through the registers, because the length of the drill can have an effect on how stable the notes will be when you attack them. All of these things, again, are relative to the structures of your head, because with everything that we talk about with mouthpieces, it's all about what is relative to conforming to how the resonance of your head is. After all, everything starts and ends with your sound at your buzz. Your equipment is only going to filter or EQ the sound that you have that resonates in your head with your air column and how you compress that air column and how the parts of your body are going to resonate to your mouthpiece. For me, I can use my father's mouthpiece, which is this old Pepitano mouthpiece, Pepe mouthpiece that my dad had made for him, it started life as an 11C. I can talk about this another time, topic for another time. But his equipment works very well for me because I kind of look like my dad, and we have a lot of similar geometry to our heads, so his equipment works well for me. However, my equipment on with somebody else playing it might not work at all because they just have different needs. I've heard guys playing on giant equipment who sound as bright as I do on my Box 16 or my 6 and a 6 Model 6 Roman numeral 4, my Glenn Miller trombone, and they can play all night long with all the endurance you'd ever want. And I can't approach that. Playing on like a 5G, and they've got all the chops in the world, where it would wipe me out in 20 minutes if I had that much time before I was knocked out. So this is all very relative, and your mileage, again, may vary. So the basics to remember are your drill length and your drill diameter are going to manage the pressure in your mouthpiece. More pressure in your mouthpiece, more resistance, enables high notes, but will not enable you to play as loud. A more open diameter, possibly longer, which can create similar resistance, will aid in your endurance, but it will still be lower. You may also be able to play softer with a larger diameter hole in your mouthpiece, and you may find that you're going to have much more sound, richer sound. As I was told when I was young, there's more room in a wider diameter mouthpiece for the sound to develop and be impressed onto your instrument. A narrower drill will reject those wider overtones and prefer these narrower overtones, and the narrower preferred overtones in that drill will then be optimized onto your instrument. So that's about it. Maybe I'll see you on the bandstand. We'll talk about this mouthpiece another time.